Chapter 298, Fall of the Golden Order. Godfrey dematerialized his longsword and followed the alchemist. "I guess you're ready to tell me about the Black Order Knights," he said softly. The alchemist tilted his head toward him. "Yes, we shall. We shall also tell you about the Winged Order." Godfrey's eyes widened. What? His brows creased. Maybe now he understood a little of what the immortal armor meant. These orders had to be born from breaking away from the Golden Order because there was no other way for knights to become strong and access mana without an alchemist. The same way it was impossible to surpass summoners without being a summoner on Earth. He was king of what remained of a broken order. From looks alone he could see the Golden Order was long past its glory days. They went into the castle, straight to a fairly large hall where he saw the alchemist seated around a massive rectangular table. The hall's source of light was the round, meticulously carved hole in the ceiling with golden rings, from the largest to the smallest placed within the hole. It could somehow absorb this pale light from the sky and unleash a bright, sun-like light into the hall. "You may sit." The chief alchemist, seated on the head chair at the other end of the table, gestured to the opposite head seat. Godfrey sat down. These wooden chairs had long backrests with the symbol of the sun and its rays at the top. In a way, the chairs looked like ornate mini-thrones. Godfrey exhaled slowly. He proceeded to entwine his fingers, leaning on the table. His eyes went up. He saw several statues at the end of the hall, almost hidden away from the light. They looked like his generals: Mountain, Tempest, Ballista, Dirge, Lament, Solstice, but there were more. He saw Apollyon, Abaddon, at least he recognized those two. He had not seen the rest, but when he saw the one with wings on both sides of his helmet, something told him that was another knight that rebelled. That knight stood in the center of them all, like their chief. There must have been changes that we would like to clarify. First, all the knights you unlocked are noble generals who have risen to the apex of the order. The true ranking amongst them is General, Elite General, Grand General, and Chief General. The chief alchemist explained. Commander is the highest-ranking knight below the noble knights. Unfortunately, you have not unlocked them at their best. Godfrey took a soft breath. I figured out they weren't ordinary captains a short while ago. I mean, the order has hundreds of thousands of knights. Their feats were flawless, and I also noticed not all knights are fused with chimeric creatures. Most of them have only the false heart. Indeed, an alchemist nodded. After titled gods arose within the order, we were no longer united as we used to. Although we were all once gods, we made the mistake of anchoring the loyalty of the knights to a mysterious unknown monarch, so when our creations rose to become gods, when their power and influence grew, that overpowering force we made them to believe in cracked because they sought for him, and he was nowhere to be found. Godfrey frowned a bit. You were blessed by the mana tree, you were Patan's hope to fight the dungeons, why pin it all on a mysterious king? The chief alchemist sighed. Our world is different from yours. 10 mere men who weren't warriors showcasing powers like we have will turn us into outcasts. We foresaw the future of such revelation. But if we spoke about a legendary warrior, a transcendent knight who had risen to become a king, who had sent us as messengers to train the fiercest of this land, then there would be an iota of hope. Another alchemist looked at him. What do you think would have happened to your world if only 10 men could summon powerful beasts? Godfrey frowned. They would either be treated as gods or be hunted down by the government, or worse, feared. They would be too rare, too different. That was what we were. The mana tree is a singular existence. It gave us power but had us devise the means to implement it. If we had failed back then, there would be no order. So it started because of the unknown king and crumbled because of him, Godfrey whispered. It crumbled because what we built was based on falsehood, on lies. When we were tested brutally during the ruination stage, when titled gods flooded our world with dungeons, our falsehood was revealed. A knight's order stands on faith. When it broke, the order fell. An alchemist said. We couldn't even send the apostles to eliminate the threats, and that lapse of immediate judgment led to the Winged and the Black Order. Two elite generals left and formed the Black Order. One grand general formed the Winged Order. Others scattered. Some may have fallen, as we do not know what became of them. Another alchemist sighed. The chief alchemist cleared his throat. A few remain, those you have unlocked. They were the few that stayed with the order. Godfrey was quiet for a while. The Golden Order was powerful in his opinion, but if it was indeed that great in the past, then this current order he saw as powerful was just a fraction of its true strength. Well, I'm king here now. Time to start rebuilding. His declaration made the alchemists look at him with peculiar light in their eyes. Godfrey smiled. All he heard was that the Golden Order was truly the best way to become uncontainable. He would first establish himself as a king, then expand to becoming an emperor, a being that was beyond comprehension. This was his first step. Since the order fell because there was no king, well, the king was here now, and Patan truly felt like home. So, tell me more about the sealed night. The chief alchemist's eyes widened. It was as if he had uttered a forbidden word. Their expression told him one thing. The sealed knight was worse than the rebels. Maybe he was a threat to the entire order at its peak. All Godfrey saw was a knight in need of a true master, and he would become one before the time came for him to meet this knight, whom just uttering about him was a taboo. There are some important things you must know about the mana tree, the chief alchemist said to Godfrey as they walked through a hallway. He had released 20,000 Golden Order knights and his noble knights. They were back home. Everything was falling into place. Not even Cain would expect this. While he had plotted and gained advantage over the century, the heritage of the order allowed Godfrey to gain momentum despite his time disadvantage. What he didn't know, the alchemist knew. There was a lot more to the castle, enough to make him stronger than he could ever imagine. Like how you guys were able to get its sap. I still can't get my head around that. If its sap can be harvested, then does that mean the mana tree can be damaged? Godfrey's speculation made the chief alchemist lift an eyebrow. The tree does what it wants. Let me explain, young king. There are specific beings in every world, the chosen, the favored, and the fortunate. These are individuals selected by the mana tree during its course of evolution. They're the foremost entities, those destined to rise to the peak with the aid of the mana tree either directly or indirectly. They reached a door which was opened by two knights, revealing a round hall being cleaned up by a good number of knights. The reason we seemed ill-favored by the mana tree is because it dropped in all 10 of us, its due. Do you know what that means, the due of a cosmic existence, the concept of mana in its physical form? The alchemist turned his head to Godfrey. You don't seem so ill-favored if you put it like that. Exactly. It gave us all the power we needed to make Patan great. I don't think it has ever given anyone other than us 10 its due. The chief alchemist's eyes flickered softly. It allowed us to fulfill our desires too, to draw its sap because our work might provide an answer to its question. We might create something worth its due. Sadly, we failed. But my point was that certain situations worked in our favor because we are the chosen of Patan, all 10 of us. Our favored were 3 rune dragons, natives of our world. Powerful beyond reason, they laid waste to civilization in order to rule Patan until the order stood against them. We lost a continent to our war. The chief sighed. The last favored is he who we do not speak of, but the mana trees fortunate of Patan are the knights of the order. The fortunate are in hundreds or thousands. They differ according to each world. They're meant to ensure evolution, to ally or fight the fortunate or favored. I see. The woman, the mother of dragons, she is a chosen of earth. The mana tree will ensure she reaches the peak of evolution one way or another or die trying. He paused, turned, and gazed squarely at Godfrey. And so are you. Both of you are your world's chosen. It doesn't necessarily mean you're guaranteed to reach the top. It means you might get there broken or die on the way, or you will fail along with your world. Godfrey's eyes narrowed, not because he heard he is a chosen, but because he already identified two favored ones. Adam and Cain. It couldn't be any other. The fortunate were those lucky enough to be regarded by the manhwa tree to be big players. The way air sustains life, the fortunate sustain evolution. They were there to make sure there was growth either through enemies or friends. I understand, but I've been meaning to ask. Can we use Tempest's fallen partner to create another, or do I have to hunt down a phoenix? Godfrey asked. We vowed not to touch a fallen knight to make another out of him. You will have to hunt. After our fall, many dungeon creatures now reside here. I might know where you'll find a phoenix. I'll get back to you when I find out where. The chief alchemist replied with a soft smile. After the conversation, Godfrey came out of the castle and decided to take a walk around the castle. On his walk, he found an ivory statue. Many of them had fallen, some had just legs left, but this one was still intact. The knight wore a great helm with two horns branching out horizontally from the flat top. Then the sharp tip of the horns tilted upwards a bit. White fur padding went around the shoulders right to his chest, with little braids of the fur resting on the chest plate. He held a large rectangular shield, much bigger than a door, and raised his other hand wrapped around the long hilt of a massive hammer axe skyward. Written on this ivory stone statue with gold was, "Protector of the Young." It was written in Patan runes, but he could understand it after years of reading those texts on the wall of their chambers. Without being told, a name flew out of Godfrey's mouth: Mountain. His eyes widened in surprise. "My king!" He heard Dirge's voice and turned to see this 9 feet tall noble knight who of course made him look short, walking toward him with her staff, occasionally striking the ground. Shouldn't she be here to see this? Dirge tilted her head gently. You mean Isolde? Godfrey faced the sky. He couldn't reach her in her dragon domain, and he promised not to summon her like she was his other summons. His parents' case was an exemption. He did not want her to feel that way, but he wondered how she was doing. Didn't she miss him? The drifting clouds reflected in his eyes. Isolde took a deep breath as she took in the strange environment. She was in a vast cavern with several dragons. It was like a clan of dragons. One of them, a huge silver dragon, looked at her, then at a cliff high above. "I've brought her your mate," it roared. Silence reigned for a bit, then a being appeared at the cliff. It was a pale-skinned man with long white hair that almost reached his thighs. His eyes were a mesmerizing emerald with scales growing out of his shoulders like horns. The scales also covered his private area. The moment Batsait laid eyes on Isolde, her own eyes shimmered with emerald light. Batsait unfurled a pair of large wings that weren't there a second ago, his eyes gleaming with authority. "Leave," he spoke in dragon tongue, but Isolde could understand. All the dragons, large and small, flew away, leaving both of them alone in the massive cavern. "Come to me," he spoke to Isolde. Her eyes shimmered once more and she unfurled her wings, then flew to where Batsait stood. The moment she landed, Batsait held her chin. "Since the dawn of our kind, the mother and father of dragons have been too proud to come together, but I shall change that. It's a pleasure to have such a beautiful mate. Your heart will belong to me and Min. Ak." Batsait couldn't believe his eyes when the shimmer died out of Isolde's eyes, and she twisted her hips, lashing her foot against his face like a whip. The blow sent him skidding backwards, his head aching a bit from a blow that could carve a hole through a mountain as her words echoed in the cavern. "My heart belongs to someone else." "What?" The father of dragons, Batsait's face twisted at what he had just heard. "You think I'll let myself be with a thing like you?" Isolde scowled. "A thing?" Batsait's eyes lit up in flames. Isolde couldn't complete the sentence when she faded. Batsait stared at where she once stood, eyes burning with rage. He had one of his elder dragons invite the new mother of dragons to his domain, only to be insulted. I tried asking nicely, but being a gentleman is truly not the way of dragons. I will tame you. With the mother of dragons he would be complete, becoming an ancient dragon king, the next level of evolution almost no dragon had ever reached. Isolde's eyes opened, and her irises reflected the clouds with dragons flying around, their roars like the sound of children playing to her ears. She stood close to the edge of a hill, overlooking her domain, when a projection of her soul appeared in the father of the dragon's domain. She didn't even know he existed until now. What a nuisance, Isolde spat coldly. What upsets you? Grace, who laid by her side, spoke. Isolde could naturally interpret Grace's growls in her mind. Someone wanted to claim me as his mate. Isolde scoffed, almost laughing at the mockery. What? Luther roared from behind. He was a good distance away, but was so big that even the distance between them wasn't enough. You must have met the father of dragons then. Will you tell your husband? Sylphiette, who was below the hill, spoke. Isolde's eyes narrowed a bit. Frey might be a softy around me, but even I fear him when he's angry. Her eyes flashed when she recalled what Godfrey did to Cecil. She had never felt so scared of Godfrey. She knew her husband had trouble controlling his actions when he's angry. I'll kill him when and if we meet again, Isolde responded. You fear your husband? Sylphiette was shocked, Luther too. Even Grace looked at her. Clearly they saw their mother as a fearless leader. Which she was, but she wouldn't deny being scared of Godfrey sometimes, especially when he was angry and had something to protect. Besides, he traumatized her when she was still a little kid. You'll do well to fear him. Do not disregard his threats, but do not worry. He won't have a reason to harm any of you. You're my little ones after all. Now, aside from that. Her expression softened. I miss my man. Godfrey opened the huge doors and took large strides out of the castle. The skis were a lot darker, a sign of nightfall, but there were still nights in the surroundings. But his eyes weren't on them, and they were not the reason he was here. Although it was late, he rushed out because Isolde had returned to her chamber. He had to show her the castle from the outside first. Godfrey stood at the top of the grand staircase and summoned Isolde at the bottom. The moment she stepped out, a soft smile graced his face as he stretched out his hands, accentuating the grandness of the castle. So what do you think? It's ours. Isolde lifted one of her slender eyebrows. It's good, I guess. Godfrey's eyes went wide as he gasped in disbelief. Are you serious, Isolde? He took one step down. What have I done wrong? This is an entire world all to ourselves. Is it? All I see is a broken castle, she replied with a tone that made his eyes flare. He seethed, glaring at her. You are unbelievable. His voice rose. He was trying to please her. What had he done? They were cool back in the Green Gate dungeon. What changed? Why was she being so exasperating? I'm unbelievable, Isolde scoffed. Says the man who hasn't once told his wife he loves her. I certainly tossed myself freely at you. I have myself to blame, she retorted sharply. Godfrey froze. His anger died like flames snuffed out by the wind. It dawned on him. Wasn't this what Percival spoke to him about? But did she just pick offense with that now and all of a sudden? She could have said something, or he should have sat down to think. Godfrey did think. Her heart was just too deep to grasp much. He thought the house was the problem. Iso? His voice trembled, his ocean blue eyes rippling softly. Isolde's heart thumped loudly. Did he just give her a nickname by accident? She liked the way he said it, that tone. It stirred something within her. Her cheeks gained a pink hue, forcing her to tilt her face away so he wouldn't know. He won't even know I like that name. I'm so infuriated, yet I also want to kiss that face so badly. Silence lingered around them. At this moment, Godfrey noticed they were alone. The place that had quite a good number of nights was now devoid of even a shadow. Where did they go? He forgot to retrieve them so they couldn't be in his soul space. Patan's cold is strong enough to affect us. Come inside, you'll catch a call. The rest of his words were stuck in his throat as Isolde blitzed past him. And he was just removing his coat, which he wore on purpose, just for this, never mind. Godfrey sighed. Percival was right. Sometimes even with all the actions hinting at a possibility she could very well see and acknowledge, saying those words were still important. A few minutes later, Godfrey sat on a bed he bought and brought over some days ago. Isolde lay at the other end with her back towards him. His head was bowed low as he sat, leaning against the wall. The walls of the room had a subtle golden gleam. It looked like a place many only imagined in their dreams. He genuinely wanted to make this place a paradise for both of them. Her expression would have lit up his day. Godfrey cleared his throat, tilting his head to get a better angle. He saw her tilt her head downward as if hiding her face from his eyes. A soft smile broke out on his face. Isu. His face brightened when he saw her squirm at that name. You like the name, don't you? I saw your reaction earlier. He heard her scoff. I'm sorry. She exhaled sharply. That definitely did no good. I really love you, Isu. I just have a hard time saying it, but I will. He grunted as Isolde jumped on him. You said it, dummy. I did, Godfrey, who was beneath her, asked innocently. He didn't even realize it. That was all it took to get her jumping over him like a cat. Awa, you're so cute when you sound vulnerable. She bit her lower lip, then smirked. We have a lot of catching up to do. Isolde whispered, her eyes gleaming with emotions that evoked the same in Godfrey. Thank goodness. Godfrey groaned in relief as this night was going to be a release for a week of agonizing longing. But first... What? Godfrey blinked. Godfrey lay on the bed, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Isolde was by his side. They were both naked but covered by the bedsheet. Both of them had startled looks on their faces. They could see the faint glimpse of sunlight at the window. It was already sunrise. Is this normal? He tilted his head toward her. She turned toward him, their noses almost touching. You're a monster, she whispered. There are two monsters on this bed, Isu. You know that. Isolde scowled. You must be the first man who calls his wife a monster. How romantic. She rolled her eyes. We should be grateful the bed still holds. I was afraid it would break. Did you miss me that much? She giggled, poking his nose with the tip of the long nail on her index finger. Probably I didn't know how much until now, he replied honestly. Well, my mother warned me about this. Please don't break me in the future. She begged with a tiny voice, earning a chuckle from Godfrey. Both of them looked at each other, lost in the depths of their eyes for a long while. You know you're my light. He reached out and gently laid one hand on Isolde's cheek. She was the only one that could make him unconsciously deactivate his blackout state. Her presence brought trust and warmth to his heart, which was almost consumed with coldness. Isolde thought she had failed to change fate, but she succeeded in a way. Without her, despite all his strength, he would have been a puppet to Cain. When did you learn to be romantic? Her words made him sigh. She was a rose with thorns in the end. Weren't all women? Seeing Godfrey rise up and wear his clothes, Isolde frowned. Won't you rest? I will be back. I need to check up on the alchemist. I gave Victoria hope, but it's much harder now that I understand some things. He turned to her. Victoria has never been a knight. I might have to visit the tomb of the past Phoenix Knight. I'll need as much information as I can gather, go on a raid for the Phoenix, and figure out if the alchemist will need a mana fruit. That's where things will be tricky. That sounds like a lot, but darling Tilda, Isolde's draconic eyes locked on his. You need rest. A few hours lying beside me won't hurt. She pouted. We've spent nearly 8 hours, Isu. I'll be back soon, I promise. He flashed out of the room before she could say another word. Isolde sighed. She wrapped the bedsheet around her, left the bed and approached the window. She looked down at the floor below from the height of her room, which might be the 4th floor. Isolde gazed at the vast green forest spreading afar. This was their world. It felt surreal that she would one day have an entire world and a castle all to herself. It didn't have the advantages of a modern house on Earth, but it wasn't bad in the slightest. The technology here was just different. And of course, they could switch when they felt like it. From here, it doesn't look like there's a threat here, but I know this place is even more dangerous than Earth. It's a fallen world populated with creatures, possibly beings at the top of the titled God tier. Far away from the castle, on another continent stood a citadel. It looked like this entire continent was set ablaze, as all that remained is ash and a fog that never left. But this citadel stood here. In the heart of this citadel, populated with tens of thousands, was a temple. Almost 100 people in black robes stood in several rows, facing the altar, which was a few stairs high. Everyone fell on their knees when the priest ascended the altar and bellowed, "Praise the Father! Praise the Father of the New World!" Everyone recited with devotion. "Praise the Lord of earth and mankind, the Savior of the superior summoners, the light in trying and dark times. We are His servants, we are His worshippers. Praise the Father of the New World." A young man spoke, his white hair hanging over his eyes. "We are the exalted summoners." John's lips moved once more. Finally, Cain had given him a summon, 2 summons to be exact. Powerful creatures made after the likeness of the natives in the afterlife world. Obsidians. Creatures born from the desires of dead souls, and within his soul space were 2, obsession and rage. Isolde was mine, and he killed her. A mad glint flickered in his eyes. Godfrey Snow. They were on his death list. Even though she was dead, his obsession for Isolde burned hotter. He did everything, just why did she choose someone who wasn't there in her vulnerable times? He was her best friend. His affection had long turned into obsession the further she slipped from his grasp, but with the summon now within him, it became madness. He plotted on kidnapping her and making her his property, since here in the sanctuary, beast summoners were no different from slaves. But the news of her death wounded his heart. She was his. Snow took her away, and Godfrey, that fool, couldn't even do a thing. He would be back to Earth soon. He would make sure they paid dearly, and then plead for his God to sculpt Isolde anew for him. It was within Cain's ability. After all, he was a god, a true god. Not even titled gods were worth a glance before him. Godfrey sat at the head seat facing other alchemists around the large rectangular table, which was almost as long as the hall. Today, though, the royal apostles were behind each of the alchemists, standing like white-armored statues. His eyes left the royal apostles and fell on the map before him. It was a large map of Patan. He could see the 2 extremely large continents this world had, but one of them was ashen, while the one with the castle teemed with life. Godfrey noticed that this map seemed to be alive. Everything drawn on it came to life, forming a miniature landscape with clouds and detail. Even with all he had seen, this was nothing short of mesmerizing. He touched the drifting clouds, the fluttering trees. He could even see as the wind billowed, taking leaves with it. There was so much on this map, but not one living creature, just black patches like ink spreading out on the golden parchment. An alchemist lifted a tiny flag with his mind and placed it on a mountain a good distance away from the castle. This mountain was black, scorched, until it reeked of smoke and fire. Godfrey could see the black ink spreading out from the mountain, like some disease. "That is where the phoenix has chosen as her nest," the alchemist told him. Godfrey squinted. He could guess that these black ink patches meant places taken over by monsters that left their dungeons. His eyes dilated at that thought. There were a lot of black patches on this continent alone. Beasts had emerged in tens to hundreds of thousands and made domains for themselves on Patan after its fall. You would have to pass through the gray fog forest. The alchemist placed a red flag on the gray fog covering a massive section of a forest. It's too big to go around it, so we considered flying over it. The chief alchemist took over. From what we've calculated, it's been exactly 399 years since civilization was wiped out. This means you would be going into an unexplored world that even we can't fully understand. Godfrey raised an eyebrow. How did you know how long it's been? We counted, all of them said in unison. Godfrey shivered at these freaks. Imagine spending all those years in the Golden Order castle counting the days since their death. How did they even calculate such a thing? It didn't make sense to him. It was best if he didn't think much or risk a headache. Patan is a new terrain, a strange, monster-infested world much more dangerous than it has ever been. It's best you send out the knights to reclaim the land slowly. Going to that mountain is too dangerous, especially when it's you, the core and heart of Patan. The chief alchemist said solemnly, "If you die, the order would be no more." "If I wasn't taking risks, I would not be speaking to you," Godfrey replied. Besides, it's not like he had a choice. He either did it on his own terms or Cain would force him to. That aside, supporting possibly over 50,000 knights, and his noble knight's expedition to reclaim Patan would take a long time, and right now, he couldn't maintain such an immense amount of mana consumption. Even with his 2 cores, he would be drained in a day at most. If anyone learned of his mana cores, they would be beyond envious, as that would empower them to great measures, but no one had to support as many summons as Godfrey. He was supporting tens of thousands, including Isolde and her dragons, since she was now a summon and had to depend on his mana reserves. He was an anchor to a lot of things. "It's best if I go alone. I want to make her a knight as soon as possible," Godfrey replied. If he didn't do this, he might fall behind with the evolution on Earth. The mana tree would not stop because of him. It wanted evolution, and it had the power to make the weak strong. The only thing he had to do was make sure he never fell behind or faced the fangs of sharks. Or worse, be saved by Cain from those sharks, which would result in an even more dire outcome. "Very well then, 2 royal apostles will be at your disposal. Your safety is paramount," the chief alchemist responded. Godfrey smiled. "I appreciate your concern, but sadly safety doesn't guarantee growth for me. Before I forget, the woman I want to become, the Phoenix Knight, has never wielded a weapon before. At most, she's decent with a dagger." The chief alchemist frowned. Knights take centuries to master their craft. Mountain took nearly 100 years to master the sword and shield, the spear, and finally settled with the hammer-axe. "Is there no way?" Godfrey frowned. "Well, the Mother of Dragons is an unparalleled prodigy built for the spear. We've studied her fighting style. It's not like a knight, but like a woman who grew in the wild, who stuck to her weapon for survival, thus making it a part of her. It's incredibly remarkable to create such an elegant, refined yet wild, unpredictable style at her age." Godfrey raised an eyebrow at the alchemist's words. "Isolde grew in the wild. We can replicate that. Put this woman into her subconscious, making her train and fight while we work on her body, extracting the gains of her mind. It's a grueling process which might change her personality." Godfrey exhaled heavily. "I already gave her hope. How drastic will the change in her personality be? She will experience years battling monsters alone, training alone, surviving alone. Her memories might become foggy, and she might lose her social capabilities. She might not know how to communicate properly, that's all I mean," the chief alchemist replied. Godfrey looked at Tempest, who stood by the door. "You heard all that. What do you suggest?" He was already hesitant. "Let her make the decision." Godfrey entwined his fingers, resting his elbow on the table and leaning forward. his lips almost touching his entwined fingers. "The bond between the phoenixes, explain it to me." "I'll show you instead," the chief alchemist said and snapped his finger. The chief alchemist snapped his finger and Godfrey appeared in the middle of nowhere. He saw two phoenixes flying. One was a pure flame phoenix with 4 wings made of blazing flames soaring above the mountains. Everywhere she passed became charred. Above the clouds was another phoenix, a lightning tendril phoenix. It was in its white harmless lightning state, its brightness shining through the clouds, so what he saw wasn't a shadow but a shape formed on the clouds by its light. Godfrey heard the flame phoenix cry out once more, and the once harmless lightning phoenix turned golden. A great rumbling roared and thunder struck through the sky as the clouds were instantly vaporized. It unleashed a lightning beam from its beak, melting open kilometers-long ravine through a mountain and deep into a forest. The flame phoenix descended and unfurled her wings once more when she was a few hundred meters away from the tallest tree in the forest. Flames burst out, consuming the entire forest as she flew over it, leaving nothing but a scorched expanse behind. They were beautiful, but the destruction they caused reflected in Godfrey's eyes. In the next moment, he found himself in the catacombs of the castle. There he found 3 huge doors. 3 generals are dead. His eyes narrowed as the chief alchemist led him through the door in the middle. In the heart of the small hall was a sarcophagus. On the lid was the sculpted image of the fallen knight. She held a 2-meter-long rapier, more beautiful than any weapon his other knights wielded. The cross guard was something to explore for months, deciphering the intricate runes carved into it, and how it was possible without damaging the cross guard, which was like a rose blossom. The blade of the rapier had thorns like the stem of a rose. Then he gazed at the image on the lid. Her armor was made after the likeness of a rose. The helmet was like a blossom, with all its petals open with sharpened edges, only leaving her lips and lower chin bare, a design he discovered to be common for most female knights except Isolde. Her pauldrons, knee guards, even the intricate carvings on the chest plate suggested the same thing. There were sharp rose blooms at both sides of her hips. This knight was elegant, this was the thorn phoenix. The chimeric phoenixes have what we've come to know as synergy. They are thunder and fire, 2 of the most violent elements yet tied together by the most delicate one. A bond between 2 genders. With their synergy they always had the same tier. The lightning phoenix had stunted growth, but the flame phoenix grows like the flame, ever rising. Through synergy, the lightning phoenix can keep up and it's stronger at the same tier. The lightning phoenix was the flame phoenix's guardian and she was his strength. The chief alchemist caressed what was once his greatest pride. Their bond was a wonder. Godfrey's heart drummed. Why did it sound so much like him and Isolde? She was his dragon and he was her knight. The chief alchemist tilted his head toward Godfrey. The bond of both creatures naturally drew both knights together, but Tempest was too tied to his knightly duties, unwilling to explore the future their bond holds other than battle partners until his eyes gleamed. She fell in battle, killed by a corrupted orc, a demon-conquered variant race of the true orcs. She fell to a warchief wielding a relic that stabbed through her soul, a soul-piercing rod. It destroys the soul, leaving nothing even for the afterlife, and it has been 500 years since then. Nothing remains of her soul and body except this sarcophagus. The alchemist sighed heavily. We considered Lament resurrecting her, but that would just be a soulless zombie without a trace of her true strength, and Tempest was vehemently against it. In the end, without her, he became half of a whole, an incomplete piece of a masterpiece. He grew in the mastery of the greatsword, but so did the burden in his heart. His tear barely budged. The light of the clouds fell and became a mere flicker in the darkness. A nobility that was once a greater light in the realm of light, that had no shadow now had shadows that stretched for eternity as he hid in darkness. You sound like it can't be restored, Godfrey spoke. It can't. Our new form, while immortal, is different. You must have noticed that they are now bound to the armor. It's like flesh to them. Only the knights you created later have the luxury of taking a few pieces, or in some cases the entirety of their armor off. The chief alchemist responded. But if you find this phoenix, then Tempest might rise from the shadows and become true nobility once more. It might cure the pain of the creature within him. Once that happens, you shall bear witness to a perfect peace. Two knights that have conquered legions. Godfrey shut his eyes and opened it again. There's a lot more to being a king than it appears. The chief alchemist looked at him. The mana tree gave you this civilization which has immense potential. We can keep growing, yet what you have is glorious but broken, and you will bear its burden to restore it. With all Godfrey had heard and faced, he had to be more careful when he wanted to create a knight. It wasn't as easy as it seemed on the surface. Regaining the main knights of the castle might be the best choice for the future of the Golden Order. I saw 15 noble knight statues in the hall, but I currently have 8. Isolde and Lysander are exceptions, so I have just 6 out of 15, Godfrey said. The others left the order. If you wish, you can try to bring them back to make the order whole again. The chief alchemist waved his hand, and 9 golden doors appeared. On each door was a weapon. He saw a lance, a mace, a tomahawk and poleaxe together, the ice witch's frost, a rapier, a flail, a longsword, and others which were quite blurred, but he was sure there had to be a healer somewhere and a strategist, probably someone who can buff the entire army. Although he guessed that last 2, he was vaguely certain it was them. The tomahawk and poleaxe knight was Abaddon, while the frost symbol was Apollyon. The only gray door was that of the longsword, which was probably the taboo knight. There was a spiked crown resting on the cross guard of the sword. That aside, he had to figure out a way to win back Apollyon and Abaddon, then somehow bring them back to the castle. For now, he didn't know how that would be possible. Could humanoid summons disconnect from their summoners? Percival told him that the authorities said humanoid summoners were people who trapped the dead souls of intelligent races before they went to the afterlife world. They carried memories of their past. Based on what he could see in Patan, the authorities' description of the humanoid summoner was the truth. Then came the next question: could they reject their summoners? This was huge, as that would mean the summon might die, as the summoner is the only anchor that has kept it alive. Like a mirage, everything faded and Godfrey found himself still sitting. "I'll go speak to her," Godfrey said, then vanished. Just then the door opened, revealing the elegant figure whose draconic eyes gleamed faintly. As she walked into the hall, the chief alchemist's voice rang. "Mother of Dragons, to what do we owe this visit?" Isolde bowed. "First, I'm grateful to all of you for bringing me back to life." "Why bow?" An alchemist tilted his head. "I swore an oath," Isolde replied. "The oath you swore was to the king, not us, though your relationship with him is rather peculiar." "Peculiar?" Isolde raised an eyebrow. She didn't fancy the tone the alchemist used. "A dragon and a man. Across all worlds, none has a history of this sort of tale being told. There might be no fruit from this relationship." All the alchemists spoke in unison. Their combined voices could make one fall on their knees, trembling violently, but Isolde's face darkened, her eyes gleaming dangerously. "Does it bother you?" she asked with a sharp tone. The chief alchemist chuckled. "Not in the slightest. We have no need for an heir. Our life is tied to our king and him alone. We're just stating facts. You're becoming more dragon and he's becoming more human, 2 distinct yet powerful races that were never meant to have this sort of relationship. But I'm bothering you with stories. There's a reason you came." "You're right." Isolde trailed her claws on the edges of Godfrey's seat, completely disregarding what the alchemist said. At least her face didn't show a single ripple. "I want to inquire about something called the Dragon Domain." She sat on the chair and crossed one leg over the other, resting a cheek on her folded fist. A sitting posture she had grown accustomed to. She didn't even know when she glided into it. You have these mystical powers and an unparalleled mind, so you must know something about the dragon domain. I want to know if there are other mothers of dragons out there, and why my domain is barren. The chief alchemist replied, "There's only one and I'm looking at her. Your domain is barren because you have to begin creation. The first mother of dragons chose to make her realm different, thus creating a domain not entirely physical, not entirely of the soul either, a middle plane where she had all the power to make it as she deemed fit and could access all dragons that had fallen, boosting her numbers. But that power came with a cost. There was always a stronger dragon. She died to one of her children who took her place. Other mothers had faced the same fate, being eaten by their daughters who would rise to become the next mother. I know I can be killed by one of my children," Isolde replied, her eyes flickering softly. "I killed the former mother of dragons to get here. The world of beasts isn't like men. Loyalty is a fragile term." Her lips curled into a smirk. "But that's not the main reason I'm here. How can I recreate my domain?" "Will it? But you must first become a progenitor to begin this process." "Oh, really?" Isolde's eyes beamed with an intense gleam. Only that it was frightening to see those dragon eyes glow, as it could be mistaken for the gleam of a hungry predator. "She's not new to power. She commands it without asking. That's a monarch," the chief alchemist said inwardly as he gazed into Isolde's eyes. A violet light flashed in the living room and Godfrey appeared in his parents' apartment. He found his parents in the kitchen. His father wore an apron and was precisely dicing vegetables while his mother hugged him from behind. "Son," Ronald gasped. His voice made Valentina, whose eyes were closed, snap open. She jerked, separating from her husband as she met Godfrey's blackout eyes. Godfrey walked into the kitchen. "I will need to learn how to cook," he told his dad. Maybe it could help him soften Isolde, probably have her hug him like what he just saw. It looked sweet. Ronald laughed. "You want to impress her, huh?" Valentina was flustered. She wasn't used to being lovey-dovey with her husband when Godfrey was around. Her husband flowed naturally, and it brought peace to her heart. Godfrey turned to his mother. "Am I expecting a sibling or—" "Shut up, young man," Valentina glared at him. With a smile, Godfrey exchanged a knowing eye contact with his father, who he had informed about Gabriel. They would stay for the time being so as not to make him feel suspicious, but once he tried to act, they would instantly teleport out of paradise. His father's smile told him nothing had happened so far. "Where's Victoria?" he finally asked. His parents told him she was at the gym, so he teleported straight to the gym and found Victoria. She was training with a rapier. The sight of her with a rapier made his eyes widen until he discovered there were a lot of other weapons on the ground. From flails to hammers, spears, swords, axes, even daggers. "What are you doing?" Godfrey's voice made her realize she wasn't alone anymore. She had been so fixed on her training, and without mana, her once keen perception had dropped tremendously. Victoria forced a smile as she wiped sweat off her forehead. "You saw my awkward movements, didn't you? Knights don't exactly go around using their fists. I've seen that the ones you have all use one weapon or the other, so I purchased as many as possible. The rapier isn't bad, but thrusting is just weird." She complained, explained herself, and gritted her teeth in the end. Godfrey tucked his hands into his pocket. "There's a way for you to get over this flaw, but it comes at a cost. It's not going to cost me my life or my limbs, since I would need both to serve as a knight, so I don't care what the cost will be," Victoria replied. Godfrey tilted his head. "You'll be trapped in your mind, made to fight over and over again. It would feel like years, and you'll be all alone. You might not be the same, you might not talk the same." Victoria dropped the rapier, approached him, placed one hand on the back of his neck, and lowered his forehead to meet hers. Their eyes met. Godfrey knew what this meant. Back when he was just a normal human, She would join their heads together like this and tell him she had his back. There was always a cost. It cost him intense pains to learn ancient boxing from someone like her and with his weak body. Seeing them in this position again made Godfrey feel like he was 8 once more. He could remember when Victoria would kneel to join their heads. Sometimes it was after a training session, and they were both sitting on the ground. Then she was 19, but now, he was almost 19 and she was almost 30. She had his back. Now he had hers. She gave him a fighting chance. It was time to allow her to do the same. "I have your back," he whispered. Victoria smiled. "I would have blown you a kiss like always, but it would mess up our current position, and besides, you're married." Godfrey's face fell, not because of the kiss but slap. She slapped him across the face. It wasn't hard, neither did it hurt, but he could remember his past self, the disbelief on his face back then. Of course the slap and the blow kiss were also tradition, but even when he tried dodging the slap, he always failed. What did she call it? Yes, a wake up call to the hardness of reality after the soft emotional head touching and blow kisses. Yes, the slap always returned the rage. Victoria walked back and squatted, picking up the weapons. "You won't be lacking kisses with the lily you've got now." She chuckled. Godfrey stretched his hand toward her as a huge door appeared behind him. It opened, unleashing bright golden light that almost blinded Godfrey from her sight. "Let's go," his voice rang. Victoria walked toward him. The moment she held his hand, both of them were consumed by the light, and she found herself before a grand ivory castle. A massive structure, but it looked weathered and archaic. "Where are we?" "You're in my world." After showing Victoria around and watching her chat with Isolde, where she bluntly showered praises on Isolde for her beauty to the point his wife's face was like a ripe tomato, threatening to burst. Then he finally introduced her to the alchemist who took her to begin measurements. Apparently, there were Golden Order elder blacksmiths. He didn't see them. He was a king, but one without true power, which was his throne, so access was denied him. He had thought the alchemist created the armor themselves, but there were actually blacksmiths. They were probably another extension of the alchemists like the royal apostles. Well, it did make sense that blacksmiths were in charge of making armor. After wishing Victoria luck, Godfrey left the castle with Isolde. It was time to hunt down the flame chimeric phoenix. Phoenixes usually had just a pair of wings, but the flame chimera had the normal wings and an additional pair of much larger angelic wings, which made them superior at speed. The roars of dragons rang as 2 of them soared above the clouds. Their wingspans were almost 200 feet wide. Isolde rode Grace, her frost dragon which she had strengthened to the tier of an origin, while Godfrey rode Aeon, a red-scaled dragon with a white underbelly. He was Isolde's favorite, but she wanted her man to have him. Their hair fluttered in the wind as they held the reins of the dragons with a vast ocean of white clouds beneath them. Although Aeon was a divine tier dragon, his extra fin-like wings at his tail made him the better one when it came to flight. Godfrey looked at Isolde, whose hair fluttered wildly. She laughed as he was slightly behind Grace. "Can you get any faster?" Hearing that, Godfrey patted Aeon. "I know she's your mother, but I'll give you a paragon core if you do better than her dragon." Aeon's eyes widened. It roared and shot surged. Isolde blinked several times as she was shocked to see Godfrey fly past her. Just what did he tell Aeon to make him so determined? She tightened the hold of her reins. Grace understood her thoughts immediately and added more power to her flaps, closing the gap swiftly. Her advantage lay in her tier. The race barely lasted 2 hours, but they had covered 200 kilometers, and it was getting more fierce. Just then, both dragons suddenly dropped. Godfrey and Isolde tried to regain balance only to realize whatever was pulling the dragons down was also pulling them too. As they burst out of the clouds, they saw a gray fog that had swallowed a huge portion of the forest. It was the gray fog forest that pulled them. Noticing this, Isolde swiftly reverted to her main body, growing to 7 feet with golden armor plates all over her. Her helmet materialized over her face and she leaped off Grace, retrieving her. Godfrey did the same thing at the same time, the crimson immortal armor covering his entire body, transforming his bearing into that of royalty in a mere instant. "Finally, I was planning to have you killed like that emperor. Wait, we're falling," the armor screamed. Godfrey almost regretted donning this armor, but he shoved that thought away. He looked at Isolde, who had fallen lower than him and was descending rapidly. She looked up. They couldn't see each other's eyes because of their helmets, but both of them could tell that they've both tried teleporting and it didn't work. Since it had come to this, Godfrey dived down like a spear, wrapping his arms around Isolde as they finally hit the trees, but he made sure to shield her with his back. It didn't matter if it wouldn't hurt her, this was his duty. Isolde's eyes softened. Lots of branches broke and several trees were fallen by their bodies. This kind of fall would have killed even King Tyr, as these trees were much stronger after over 1,000 years of absorbing mana. The moment Godfrey crashed on the ground, that very moment, Isolde faded from his arms like she was a mirage all this while. He shot to his feet, looking in every direction with dilated pupils. Isolde. Godfrey knew he needed to calm down, but just couldn't. He was growing desperate by the second, but a strong female voice rang from the fog. "She can't hear you, demon. That's what you are, aren't you?" That wasn't Isolde, but she said Isolde couldn't hear him, meaning she was alive and around here somewhere. "Did you hear that?" he asked the armor, finally calming his heart. "Hear what?" it asked back. Godfrey's eyes narrowed. He clearly heard that voice with his ears. "Where is Isolde?" "Facing her lies, and so will you. You reek of lies you've told yourself. The truth you hid from, I will expose it," the voice replied. "Lies?" Godfrey frowned. "We're in trouble." The armor spoke what made Godfrey's ears perk. "Do you know what I'm facing?" he asked. "You're against a titled god, the truth seeker. Judging from the scale of the fog, you're against a titled god at the peak of its tier, just below the ancient gods," the immortal armor told him. "So I'm dead." "You're not. What you face is an obsidian, a race from the afterlife world. Obsidians are made from emotions, longing, hate, obsession, rage, delusions. What you face is a delusion obsidian who deceives people by forcing them to accept the truth, but it doesn't want your truth. It wants you to believe it. Unfortunately, most of its targets fail to leave. It won't fight you physically. It can't, but it can fight your mind. Just remember it's a delusion, not the truth. Listening to a piece of old armor won't help you. We both know what you are." He heard the voice like a woman screaming for justice. In the next moment, he was sitting on a heap of corpses, hundreds of them, their blood gushing down, eyes wide with horror. "You're a king sitting on a hill of corpses, yet you delude yourself. You're one step away from breaking down into a maniac and wiping out all life within your sight, yet you call yourself strong. A man that can't even get hold of his emotions. What a joke." The truth seeker's words pierced through his chest like an arrow meant for his heart alone. "Look at the pain you've caused." It screamed, and Godfrey saw the families and friends of those who died facing him. "Look at the pain and misery you bring. Where was mercy? Weren't you strong enough to choose safer options?" "And what would it change?" Godfrey responded with a question after being silent for a while. A mocking laughter rang from the unseen being. "Beautiful, the demon is out." The moment it said that, Godfrey saw more bodies dropping into the hill as the scene of their families weeping flashed before his eyes. More kept falling as even the voice went silent, only the loud thuds of bodies echoing endlessly. "Even you see what I see." While bodies kept falling from an unseen sky, something moved at an incredible speed, blitzing through the fog before its eyes found a golden armored knight with long red hair falling down her back like silk. Soft, mocking laughter floated out like echoing whispers. Frey, Isolde, who had kept walking but it seemed as if she was still at the same spot, shouted Godfrey's name but her ears twitched, responding to the soft laughter. Her eyes narrowed and she turned, fingers tight around the shaft of her spear. Isolde Pendragon, what are you trying to prove? Isolde's eyes locked on where the voice came from and swung her spear in that direction. The fog cleared, but nothing was there. Fierce? Hehe, of course you are. Isolde Pendragon, the selfish woman with so much pride you're oblivious to reality. Isolde looked around, eyes keen. I know you hear me. We both knew if you stepped aside your Uncle James wouldn't have been your enemy. Women are not the alphas of dragons. Your father was blinded by love and you by the boundless pride that what isn't meant to be yours was yours. You could have aided him, you could have supported him. The family would still be strong. The dead wouldn't have died. This is all your fault. Isolde felt whatever was speaking to her moved around her, staring at her with such a scornful gaze that made her feel like a wreck inside. No words. I'm not baffled, it was to be expected. You've never treated anyone properly, always aloof, always feeling superior. You think you're protecting yourself from them because of your position, but I'll tell you the truth you've refused to tell yourself. You were like that because of your pride. Your selfishness wasn't loyalty to your family, it was loyalty to yourself. The girl who wants the throne, who wants to lead the family. You as a dragon are meant to bow to the male. It's the nature of dragons, it's the nature of Pendragons. Haven't you seen your mother? Isolde's eyes gleamed. I won't do it. A chuckle rang. There she is, the woman who seeks to be alpha. You've ruined the Pendragon family and you can't still rule it. Bo, redeem yourself and bow to him. The image of Batsuit appeared in Isolde's eyes. She found herself back in that cavern with Batsuit gazing down at her from above. Isolde's eyes hardened like steel. I will not. I might be prideful, selfish, and ambitious, but I won't bow and I will take what is mine. The Pendragons will never have prospered under that snake of a dragon. I own myself. I will not be reduced to a mere mate. I chose my future. She smiled as she lowered her spear. And I've chosen him. Her eyes widened when the fog cleared to reveal Godfrey seated on a hill of corpses with more dropping. He was surrounded by blood and dead bodies. He looked intimidating. Him, a loud burst of laughter filled Isolde's ears. You ruined the life of that young man. The fog moved as Isolde hurried toward Godfrey only to be met by fog, and it seemed like Godfrey had vanished. He was there 1 second and now there was nothing. I know what you did. You couldn't stay away from him, so you tore his future apart just to have him. Such love. What? Isolde's eyes trembled. That's rubbish, she spat. Did I hit a nerve? Truth-seeker chuckled. Was there any reason for you to go to that school? You had seen so much about him, but that wasn't enough for you. You were not supposed to be in his life, yet you forced yourself in. Some so-called savior. The fog gushed toward Isolde, forming a vague female face. You used your knowledge to trap him between your fingers. Isolde looked indifferent if one gazed at her helmet, but inside, she bit her lower lip. Yes, it was because of her selfish reason that she went to Manhattan, but the main objective was to help. Liar, Truth-seeker screamed. You knew fate wasn't to be tampered with. Then it shouldn't have shown him to me. Isolde scowled, but it came out as a scream. Oh, really? You think you saved him, but you ruined him. You ripped away his glorious future because your selfish desire blinded you to the bigger picture. He wasn't meant to be saved. Isolde's breath trembled. He was feeding beast summons to Dirge. He turned entire cities into hells of shadow wraiths. He was mad. Cain made him mad, and you think that's his glorious future. You sound terrified. Are you terrified of what he is now? Do you see what I mean? You made terror a weak king. Accept the truth, you ruined his future. You ruined the future of others doing this. What you are now is a mistake." The fog around her grew thicker, almost choking Isolde. Isolde felt her feet leave the ground as something tightened around her throat. She was powerless, that's what her mind told her. "No, no, I'm not," Isolde screamed inwardly, summoning Luther, who unleashed flames everywhere in a fit of fury. She fell to the ground, but just then the fog swallowed Luther and he vanished. Her eyes widened. He was disconnected from her completely. "We are not done," Truth-Seeker's eerie laughter rang, ever close yet distant. "You're selfish. No gold becomes pure without the rigorous process of refinement. His training from Cain would have forged a perfect vessel, but you poured water into the forge out of mercy for the gold. Your blunder ruined him, and you know this to be true." "It's not." "Why does your voice tremble then?" Isolde looked up. "Stop." "Why should I?" "Because you're an entitled princess born pampered from birth. You were a global figure the day you were born, praised by the world's best, exalted by the world for awakening so early when in reality you were just a juicy meal spotted by a superior being. You were food, darling, and the world called you special for it." Truth-Seeker laughed wickedly. "I almost forgot, you left your food status. You fought against him being a fanatic. You think you saved him, yet you drank the blood and ate the flesh of the past mother of dragons to become what you are now. What a hypocrite." Scenes flashed in Isolde's eyes one after the other. "You ruined him," Truth-Seeker screeched, so loud Isolde felt her eardrums nearly explode. Her eyes moistened. Why did these words cut so deep? She tried to reason, but it was as if her mind couldn't process anything. "You know what you did will affect fate, yet you went on babbling that mouth of yours." Isolde closed her eyes. Her heart hurt, her arms trembled as she felt wretched. It was right. No one gave her the right. But she ruined him. "Break, your life is filled with so many mistakes. This is why you wallow in misery in the afterlife," Truth-Seeker said within her mind. Born privileged, Isolde recalled when she was 10. At that age, she was sent to a Blue Gate dungeon, a cold, mountainous terrain with suppressor bracelets where she fought wolves twice her size. She could remember grimacing in pain from injuries and the frostbite. She could remember looking for help but finding none. Supplies were always by her side every morning she woke up as she explored the wilderness with nothing but one spear and 2 years of spear training from their family's butler. Each day blessed her with a wound. Femininity was discarded beneath the snow as all that was left was survival. Not even running to safe places worked, as the Pendragon watchers in secret would drive beasts toward her. Silver Spoon, adored by the globe, she suffered for 6 months every year from 10. She fought for survival in the wild in the midst of her family members vying for higher power and gains even from a young age. Life had never been easy. Being born at the top only robbed her of everything a normal child would enjoy. Was she selfish? During those times, she faced monsters during the day and nightmares at night. One golden-haired, blue-eyed young man frightened her every night. Isolde would see him rip off the heads of beast summons for dirge, and other humanoid summons turned into wraiths. Sleeping was a nightmare. She went days without sleeping, afraid to see his face. She woke up screaming. The mere mention of his name could make her collapse. But as time passed, as her dreams flowed in reverse, the man she once feared became one she expected to see in her visions. His struggles, his innocent smile, the beautiful sparkle of his eyes, the way his hair waved in the wind. She was sad when he was sad, happy when he was happy, enraged when he was bullied in Manhattan. He controlled her feelings and she grew used to it, but then one day the vision stopped. It was like life came to a standstill. "Frey." A teardrop ran down Isolde's cheeks. She just wanted to keep that smile. Was that wrong? To make just one man happy, to make his world vibrant? What did he do to deserve so much pain? She knew what would happen to him. She could stop it, and so she went into his life. Tears flowed down Isolde's eyes. I'm not perfect, but I gave all for him, and in him I found myself. I stopped being just food. I stopped being just the spectator. I wasn't part of the audience anymore. She was selfish enough to be selfless to the extent of dying, just to make sure he didn't become that man who had lost the light. It was the truth. Just then, a sudden gale blew away the fog, releasing Luther and revealing a path for her. Delusion had failed, but it had more than one target. She definitely wouldn't lose this second one. Godfrey wasn't sitting on a hill of corpses anymore, but sinking into it. Hundreds of bodies, yet more still, fell as his mind was being shrouded. Delusion knew Godfrey didn't want pain, and that was his weakness. A flaw he couldn't escape because he had caused pain, not to one but hundreds. There was no way he could accept that truth. You wanted to save like your father, but killed the very same people he worked with to ensure order. You brought disorder, violence, death when you are supposed to represent order. That thing inside of you, it's called the Golden Order, isn't it? The mana tree had trillions of options, yet it settled for a weakling. Weak in mind, weak in everything. These are people you would kill and those you've killed. You should be called the king of demons. Maybe they're even benevolent compared to you. Truth Seeker snickered. I know you do not seek the whole truth. You tell half-truths, twisting it to suit your objective. There was no reply. The world forged him. He was a product of the cruelty of the world, but deep down, Godfrey didn't want to be one. He didn't want to kill, but he understood necessity and protection. His hands were soaked in blood because, in this world, if it wasn't them, it would be him. No one cared for choices when someone pulled the strings and could make you wrong no matter what. I'm selfish, but shouldn't I? I didn't want my mother to die. In the end, he was driven by his urge to protect what was his. He didn't walk about killing for the sake of it. Those people, once spared, would come back and do what was irreparable. Godfrey had a duty and fulfilled it, but it didn't make his path any lighter. Bodies may pile endlessly, but he wouldn't put down his sword. He did not like this path, who said getting stronger was easy. The top was more brutal than the bottom. The truth was that he hated that he had to kill those policemen, but knew he had to. Duty overcame all. He was just an innocent victim of a mastermind doing his best to remain in one piece. What's that saying? When in Rome, be like the Romans. Well, he was in a post-apocalyptic world. Becoming a hardened survivor was the only path of guaranteed success, but he didn't enjoy it, and that was the whole truth. Unfortunately, mercy just didn't work. My hands are tied. His head sank into the hill of bodies, but in the next moment, everything cleared. It was like the bodies didn't exist in the first place, but Godfrey had felt that they were real. He looked at the path before him and regulated his breath. His mind was clearer than ever. Yes, duty to protect himself and those around him carried him. He didn't want to kill, but had to. That was Godfrey Daniels. The wannabe hero who discovered not all heroes are praised. Mock him for being merciful. That was just how he was. He was raised right. But to protect that right, he had to step into the wrong, but the right will forever be in his heart. He was duty made manifest. You passed, the immortal armor said, and Godfrey nodded. I did, and I think I'm prepared to give you a name. In your immortal life, you'll always remember this name. I have a long list of names. I don't think I want another to remember a dead man henceforth. The immortal armor was solemn this time around. I was made to be passed on to the killer of my past owner. I really don't have any grudge against you since I lost my attachment to my hosts a long time ago. You won't be any different if you have to protect the killer of your past companions over and over again. Godfrey's eyes flickered. I see. Let's see if you can survive until 50. I would prefer it if you're a few centuries old, but I'll lower the standards. The immortal armor responded. That's a long time, but I think you'll change your mind. A year at most, Godfrey told him as he walked through the fog. If the armor could raise an eyebrow, it would have. Have you ever wondered why you're different? Why you have an entire castle hosting the former chosen world's race when your mana system only supports summoning living beings? Truth Seeker's whisper made Godfrey pause. His eyes narrowed when he saw his path grow narrower. I know why. I know why you didn't awaken and needed the aid of a platform at 16 to unleash what had been inside of you since birth. It spoke once more. Godfrey saw the path was getting smaller. There was no doubt this titled god was adamant about devouring him. It probably wanted to pull him into another test by luring him in with a secret he would desperately want to uncover. Violet light flashed and he teleported to the end of the path, causing a loud screech that tore through the forest. You fool! Godfrey could guess the main reason he was different was because of his chosen status, but the mana tree did break its own unbreakable rules. That was tough. The mana tree saw little in power limits as it desperately wanted to answer its question, but it almost never broke the mana system of any world. This could only mean one thing. If the mana tree didn't break Earth's mana system law, it did something that allowed his existence. It found an opening and inserted it in the Golden Order, its greatest opportunity of gaining an answer. When Godfrey came out, he found Isolde a few meters away packing around. The moment Isolde saw him, she dashed toward him, her heart swirling with lots of turmoil. Her helmet was a one-piece Corinthian type with an almond opening that revealed her eyes, reflecting Godfrey's image. She wrapped her arms around his neck, removed her helmet, pulled up the visor of his own, and kissed his lips like they've been apart for a decade. Godfrey pressed her close to him as she held him tight even when their lips disconnected. "Iso, are you all right?" She nodded like a child being comforted. "She's taller than you." His armor snickered as Isolde was 7 feet tall in her golden armor while he was 63. "She's not taller than me. This is just her Patan form." "Doesn't matter." Godfrey almost lost it. Meanwhile, Isolde felt her heart find peace with his hands around her. She felt so small, so secure that her eyes naturally closed. She knew her parents loved her, but they also made her understand she had to own up to her status. Every time, their words echoed. This was a dangerous world, and they could be gone at any time. She had to depend on herself for survival, but she failed to engrave that lesson into her soul. She ended up depending on him. Godfrey had to find a place underneath a canopy tree where he sat on an aerial root, while Isolde slept peacefully beside the root. His eyes were locked on her. Godfrey came out stronger, being clearer with himself, while Isolde came out knowing that he was everything, and her heart longed for him more than ever. Once she found him, peace came and along with it rest. I know she's a ravishing goddess even as she sleeps in armor, but at least blink. Besides, you also need rest. That fog absorbs energy. I'm surprised you're still so full of vitality. The immortal armor chided. I'm good, Godfrey replied. She's the mother of dragons, one of the apex dragon species. What except a progenitor or a titled god can harm her? Even if they can, she's unkillable. You're the one that can actually die. Even if she's the god of dragons, she's mine. Mine to protect. What you're saying shows how poor your EQ is. You have to be intentional about showcasing your feelings, and I want to watch her while she sleeps. You don't always get to see her look so vulnerable. Godfrey's reply made the immortal armor scowl. Lover boy. Well, if you die I'd benefit because there's a better, taller candidate right before my eyes. It snickered. Get your eyes off my wife. She's not if you're dead. Shut it. Get some rest then. Godfrey had to lean against the trunk to get some rest. It was when he shut his eyes that it was obvious. His body was running on the emotions of his mind. He was dead tired. That fog was something else. If he had stayed longer, he would have collapsed and would become food for delusion. So that's what it was after. Before he fell into the dream world, Godfrey subconsciously summoned Solstice and Dirge. A few hours later, Godfrey opened his eyes and found Isolde caressing the heads of Grace and Aeon as they nudged softly against her. Dirge and Solstice were standing beside him, two towering, magnificent knights covered in exquisite golden plates. Isolde turned toward him. "Can we go kill that phoenix?" he said to her as he rose to his feet. "Whatever you wish, darling." Both dragons roared as they mounted them and took to the skis. A few hundred kilometers later, they saw the scorched expanse leading to the Black Mountain. They landed in the forest, close to the edge of the scorched land. Godfrey was a 27.2 Paragon tier summoner. Isolde was also of the exact same tier. In Blackout state, she was 28.2, but in her general state, she was a 28.7 Progenitor tier knight. Godfrey was also a 28.2 Progenitor tier in Blackout state, but the immortal armor boosted his overall capability, boosting him to 29.2 with his defense capable of handling worse threats. And it would be crucial, as he was about to face a chimeric phoenix, a creature much stronger than both of them. A 29.9 Progenitor tier chimeric, much stronger than creatures at its tier. "We'll set up an ambush for it." Godfrey summoned an echo of Ballista's great bow, a powerful weapon capable of unleashing great devastation. At the same tier, Ballista was one of his most destructive summons, and his skills consumed a vast amount of mana. "You'll use invisibility while I'll lure the phoenix. Which skill will you use to kill it?" Isolde tilted her head. "Ballistic Havoc," Godfrey responded, causing her to recall the same skill he used in the chess dungeon they entered. It utterly decimated the king without giving the boss a moment to breathe. Isolde gave him a nod and shot toward the mountain. While Godfrey vanished from sight upon activating invisibility, Isolde made her way to the mountain. At the top of the heavily scorched mountain, she found large boulders placed around the top, taking the form of a nest. Large blue feathers, bigger than a human, decorated the nest, but these beautiful feathers made Isolde's eyes narrow. "Blue feathers, isn't this the nest of an orange chimeric phoenix?" she muttered to herself. Just then, a bird's cry made her look up. A massive four-winged blue phoenix was heading for the mountain. It just dropped a large bull with runes etched into its horns, and let out the cry Isolde heard. The phoenix had spotted her, even from that distance. In the next moment, the phoenix exploded with a sudden surge of speed that only got faster by the second. Almost instantly, it closed in and spat a blue fireball at the nest. The flames had not even hit her, but Isolde could already feel the scorch. She free fell backward as the fireball exploded upon contact with the mountain top. After falling for a few dozen meters, Isolde slammed the head of her spear into the mountain. It carved through the rock but eventually stopped, allowing Isolde, who held the spear with one hand, to somersault twice and land on it with her feet. With surprising stability, she lifted her head, looking at the phoenix that gazed down from the mountain top. The phoenix's eyes gleamed. It was a blue phoenix with flames 2 times hotter than that of an orange chimeric phoenix. It was the queen of this area. None dared tread into its domain. Until now. It spat another fireball at Isolde, but the flames didn't consume her. A violet portal appeared above Isolde's head and reappeared before the phoenix, tossing its own fireball back at it. Doing that to a creature much stronger than her took quite a portion of mana to make it work, but it did. The phoenix screeched as it burst into flames. Every part of its body seemed to be made purely out of blue fire. It was enraged, exactly what Isolde wanted. "I will make your death painful," the phoenix spoke, descending to meet Isolde with a feral glint in its eyes. Seeing it had immunity to its own flames, Isolde pulled out the spear from the mountain with her mind and fell once more. Her hair spread out, floating aloft. This image reflected in the phoenix's eyes. Then it spat another fireball. Violet light engulfed Isolde's body. She vanished, reappearing at the bottom of the mountain, turned and ran. Flames bathed the mountain in the next moment, roaring wildly and billowing after her as the phoenix soared midair. In its current form, everything around it was set ablaze, just like what the chief alchemist showed Godfrey. The phoenix cried out, spitting several fireballs which Isolde either dodged or returned to its face. Almost there, Isolde said inwardly as she was halfway across the scorched landscape, but at this moment the phoenix opened its wings wide. A fierce gale, accompanied by blue fire, gushed out in every direction. It swept Isolde off her feet, launching her into the air. Midair, she made ice mist burst out of her armor to counter the flames before crashing once, spinning midair to balance herself and planting her spear as she hit the ground the second time. This time around, she landed properly and slid backwards, her boots and spear creating small trenches. The phoenix was already upon her. "I've got you." The bird's eyes gleamed as flames rolled to its beak. On the other hand, Isolde smiled behind her helm. She was in the perfect range for Godfrey. Suddenly the phoenix snapped and spat the largest flame it had ever unleashed. These flames, not blue but violet. It was sudden and instantaneous, clearly deliberate, and in Godfrey's direction. "Child, I've lived long enough to have felt the pain of sneaky pests." The phoenix snickered while Isolde's eyes widened. That flame had a hue of a fire even hotter than the blue flames. It was almost 2 times hotter than the blue flames and moved faster than anything they've encountered. Fast and unavoidable. That was the blue phoenix's hidden ace, her hottest flame. None had survived it. She had seen him, acted like she didn't because something about him told her that man was a dire threat. "Frey!" Isolde screamed, launching her spear at the phoenix, but it twisted its neck away, snickering only to spot a silhouette in the dwindling violet flames. "How?" Godfrey's golden eyes gleamed through the visor as he drew the great bow to the limit. "I have to say, you're epic." The immortal armor chuckled in return. Sensing the threat, the phoenix tried to create distance, but Isolde clenched her fist and her spear, which the phoenix dodged, came back. Completely covered in frost, it pierced through the phoenix's wing. In its elemental form, that didn't do much damage, but it disrupted its flight. With one wing slapped down, the phoenix lost balance and fell. Right then, the first arrow, made out of ice using the basic summoner skills he learned in Manhattan, packed with immense mana, struck the phoenix. Ice spread out as it screamed. When the ice was about to dissolve, another arrow came, and another. Countless arrows flew out with Godfrey's arm moving relentlessly. His muscles swelled, mana flowed through him, shaping long arrows which were instantly released. He was like a machine, like a humanoid machine gun. This was ballistic havoc, a skill that meant frenzy, pushing one beyond the normal. To Isolde, it sounded like bombs were detonating unceasingly. The earth around Godfrey sank, inch by inch with every arrow he fired. Each arrow packed with the intense frost of the snow elf Lysander fused with. With a loud cry, the phoenix collapsed, completely covered in ice and arrows. "You will die." Her voice suddenly rang as her eyes snapped open, and she breathed flames into the sky. It pierced the atmosphere, and large balls of flames began to fall from the clouds. A rain of fire and annihilation. The entire terrain, the scorched mountain, the black expanse and the forest around it would be set ablaze. Isolde teleported to Godfrey's side, and he manifested Mountain's shield. Upon activating one of its runes, a golden translucent dome shielded them from the fire rain. Blue flames devastated their surroundings, transforming the place into a blue inferno. Though shielded, the heat could still be seared. Unfortunately for the phoenix, the dome reflected the damage of the fireballs that struck it. The phoenix cried out in pain, as this wasn't her receiving her flames but the damage, an actual injury. However, she was free, Her flames had melted the ice. "I will kill you and use your mana for my rebirth." Crying out with anger bordering on madness, the phoenix gathered flames at her beak, purple flames for one final deadly onslaught. It was even bigger and brighter than the last purple fireball. The phoenix was going all out, betting on using them to revive herself, but Isolde's spear that was stuck to the ground shifted. It got another blade at the bottom, much longer than the usual tips. It gleamed with violet light, unleashing an energy ball packed with catastrophic energy. It was Nyx's void blast. The phoenix was struck at its throat, throwing the purple fireball off course. The fireball tore a massive hole through the scorched mountain. Although the spear still didn't do much damage, the phoenix had exhausted its energy and left its elemental form, returning to a state where it was vulnerable. But the phoenix didn't plan on giving up, even if it meant ripping these pests with her talons, a method beneath her dignity. She would do it. Just then the phoenix noticed someone above it, a crimson-armored man. His armor was as intimidating as those eyes gleaming like the blazing sun. A longsword materialized in his hand and he swung down. The phoenix forcefully pulled its head away and swung its massive wings at him. Tendril wings burst out of Godfrey's back. Lightning crackled, paralyzing her right wing, forcing her eyes to widen. He spun, swinging the sword upward and unleashing a mana sword beam. A golden crescent light made of mana that almost took off the phoenix's head. With a loud boom, the massive bird collapsed, and the flames all around them began to fade slowly. "We did it!" Isolde beamed as she gazed at the crimson-armored man billowing with smoke. He had been like that ever since the phoenix blasted that purple flame at it. She had to admit, it made him look more masculine and formidable. Unfortunately, the immortal armor didn't think that way. It swiftly left Godfrey's body and began jumping about with smoke oozing out of it. "Hot, hot, hot," it screamed. Godfrey himself froze himself over and over again, that it made Isolde unable to laugh at the armor's behavior. That violet fireball must have been incredibly devastating. Anyone, including her, would have been ash. She was durable, but she didn't have the armor. To survive that blast at that range was literally impossible, unless she sacrificed the lives of her dragons, but that was still impossible since she would not be able to react to the fireball in the first place. After a while, Godfrey's body became stable. The scars from fighting the Crimson Emperor were still there. He didn't want more. His mother wasn't powerful enough to remove a scar inflicted by a peak-level paragon. "They won't last forever." Isolde's soft words flowed into his ears as she looked at him. "I guess looking at them gave me away." Godfrey chuckled inwardly. "We killed a progenitor, one close to the peak," he said. "Once you unlock the Rapier Knight, Tempest will also get stronger, so you'll rise drastically, almost hitting the titled god tier." Isolde told him, her hand on the spear as she watched the phoenix core form above it. Titled gods are just the beginning of Earth's ascension. In a way, we're just demigods with titles. The Golden Prince, king of a chosen world, those titles define who we are. I learned from the alchemist that some gods are stronger than others, some are rulers, some are subordinates, some wanderers, and some are rogues. You and I, we are in the class of rulers," Isolde said as Godfrey climbed the phoenix to take the core. "Rulers?" His eyes flickered. There were lots of burdens for being a ruler. Isolde was surely facing hers, and he had to fix his own knights and go in search of others. Apparently, in order to get other knights, he had to first claim his throne, and to do that he would face that king-like presence. As a king, he could rebuild the order. As an emperor, he could make the order ascend. Then, he would be a king of not just titled gods, but ancient gods. Only an emperor, a king above kings, could rule over ancient god knights. "We can't fail then. Our predecessors have." Godfrey looked at his wife, who stood there, holding her spear like a warrior queen. She looked regal. Just then the immortal armor poked the phoenix's head. "Big bird, I've seen bigger." Godfrey's eyes twitched. Why was he the only one who could listen to this armor's annoying words? "Thank you for protecting him," Isolde said softly. The armor turned its helmet toward her. "Awa, I knew I should have chosen her instead of you. Well, I'll manage as long as you're with her." Isolde blinked, then faced Godfrey. "What did it say?" "It's my job." "That's not why." Godfrey retrieved the armor. After the body and the core of the phoenix was given to the alchemist, Isolde was in their massive bedroom, resting on the sofa by the window. She wore a white satin robe, monitoring the mana flow inside her. Truly, as the alchemist said, she could be considered a unique summon. Isolde could grow quickly through battles. All summons could, but hers was several times more pronounced. It accumulated, and right when she was in the bathroom, there was a surge of mana inside of her, raising her tier from 27.2 to 28. It was the accumulation of a good number of fights, but it was rewarding. A little smile graced her face. Then she noticed Godfrey leaning against the door to the bathroom. His wet hair almost covered his eyes entirely. "Sire," she winked at him. "What?" "You're king now. You should prepare. Victoria will soon become a knight. I hope you have a good name for her." "You sound like you are not going to be present." "Our souls are connected. I'm always with you, but there are things I need to handle in my domain." Isolde was already learning her duty as the number of dragons she had were growing. Not all were friends. Her place could be challenged if she was reckless. Dragons were not a race that cherished weakness. Godfrey walked up to her, squatted and held her hand, which was smaller than his. "Go, you know where to find me." Isolde's cheeks flushed at his deep voice. It was deeper than usual. She blew him a kiss and vanished, knowing fully well Godfrey would have loved a proper kiss. Of course, she did it purposely. What else would satisfy Isolde more than her husband longing madly for her? Sly as a vixen. In the dragon domain, Isolde looked at the dragons in this barren wasteland with ambitions burning in her heart. As a mother, her duty was to make her children better, stronger. This meant no matter how strong she grew, a select few of her children would inevitably be stronger. As much as loyalty was a weak term, she had to build a bond with those dragons, or face what even the first mother of dragons faced. Great, almost unfathomable power was right on her grasp, but it could kill her if she didn't put extra effort into fostering it. Her hair was much longer here. It reached her knees, beautiful dragonfly wings folded behind them. She wore a white tunic which was tight at her abdomen and flowed down to her thighs. Her tail gently moved as her legs, now digitigrade, ending with claws. She looked majestic, a mother to the most powerful beast race, a race that was more powerful than the humanoids. Isolde's hair covered her back and caressed the black stone ground like silk as she crouched and touched the earth. The earth cracked, life almost springing up, but died before it came out of the soil. "I will rebuild this place," she muttered, channeling all her energy into her will. Sweat beads formed and ran down as just one crimson flower bloomed. "If fighting makes me stronger." Her eyes flickered with a ruthless light as a spear materialized in her hand. "Who would like to take my place?" Her voice echoed as she locked eyes on a wingless dragon with lots of spikes. Isolde had sensed that dragon's gaze from the moment she came, feeling its thoughts. It wanted to devour her, and it wasn't the only one. Well, it was time for a purge. Until she had solidified her position, she wouldn't let these vermin grow in number. Instead, she would use them to rise. What kind of mother kills her children? Well, the kind with a child after her own life. The dragon let out a mighty roar as it rose to its feet. "You chose your death." "And who gave you the authority to decide that?" Isolde's eyes gleamed. "Luther, sit down. This is my fight." Isolde glared at Luther, who was about to act. Her wings opened. Meanwhile, at the entrance of a massive cavern bigger than 100 football fields, a huge dragon with green and black scales and a slightly bulging throat appeared. It flew into the cavern and landed with a loud thud, lifting its head to the cliff where a lean, pale-skinned man stood. His extremely long white hair fluttered due to the wind the dragon generated, yet his green eyes were unfazed, looking down on with authority like the true monarch he was. Belial lowered its head. It had heard the news of the mother of dragons, a mere paragon existence insulting an existence that stood in the rank of ancient gods. A monarch tier being about to evolve into a sovereign. Once he surpassed that to become a god-king, Batsuit would be the second dragon since the dawn of life to ever ascend to such a tier. Yet his mate rejected him. Well, all dragons were prideful, their king will tame her eventually. He tamed them all despite their pride, she would not be any different. Gazing at the over 400 feet long dragon, Batsuit began to speak. I want you to invade Earth. You will be my first general. I hear your eggs will soon hatch. Unleash that army into Earth. The ruination is coming. Earth must fail. Batsuit's eyes gleamed with malevolent light. She will fall on her knees and beg. He knew she was once a human from Earth. Whoever her heart belonged to would die in the carnage his general was about to bring. Dragons were the only beings not restricted to a world's evolution. They could ascend on their own and find a world to dominate, but before Isolde would grow to that level, she would already be in his grasp. Belial bowed, turned, and flew away. He went to his cavern in his own mountain, flying above the streams of acid and the hundreds of eggs bathed in them. Gold. Valuable gemstones and treasures formed hills which it also flew over, and landed on an enormous slab, right under the sunlight from a small hole at the top. The time has come. I shall feed my army with the flesh of men. Belial closed his eyes and located Earth. As a chosen world, it wasn't hard to spot as it was bathed in a radiant light. What caused darkness for the people on Earth actually shone bright outside, so bright races across all worlds would spot it almost immediately. Belial opened his eyes when he got there, and spatial ripples began to fluctuate at the entrance of his cave. Mana began to gather on the island of the Statue of Liberty. In a home in Beijing, China, Yuan, a graduate of Manhattan Summoners High, was exercising, doing press-ups in his bedroom. His room was quite large. The large television that wasn't switched on was directly opposite his bed, which leaned against the wall. To his left was a floor-to-ceiling window with the beige curtains pushed aside, revealing the dark skies. It had been over a week, and the sky remained the same. Scientists had given a few speculations that it might be because Earth was a chosen world. The concept of a chosen world stunned the masses, but it was said other chosen worlds had theirs for years. According to their calculations, however, Earth's darkness would last for 6 months. Everyone was switching to a state of defense due to the surge of gates. Yuan and his family returned to China after he graduated, and although he lived in his own home, his parents had forced him to return to the family house. Unfortunately, he couldn't train in peace as someone barged into his room. It was his little brother, Wang Yibo. Dragging Yuan's twin sister Wang Chu ran along. "Whoa, big bro, you went to the same school with a legend," the 15-year-old exclaimed with wide, excited eyes. Yuan turned to his twin sister, who shrugged as she made herself comfortable on his sofa, adjusting her glasses. Though twins, they weren't close. The tension between them was obvious as Yuan went ahead to sit on his bed. Only Yibo could bring them together, and he did. Dragging Chu ran to the bed to sit before showing them his tablet. Yuan couldn't believe his eyes. Rage, unbelievable rage and resentment burst from his heart when he saw the face on the screen. Half of it was a golden-haired young man with blue eyes, and the other half of the face was a golden helmet. "Why are you showing me this?" Yuan's face darkened. He hated Godfrey more than anything. His hate for his sister only grew stronger after he met Godfrey. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story. And if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down.